Hey there, I'm your host, Robert Jackson, and today we're going to be talking about living off campus. There are a lot of ways one can live in and around their schools, and each and every single one of them comes with their own set of challenges. Whether you're living on site in a campus dorm, immersed in Greek life or an equivalent of Greek life, living close to campus or you have to commute for a ways, or maybe you're working remotely. There are different feelings of connections that you physically feel if you are a certain distance from that school. Some of the issues you might run into might sound silly in some situations, but everyone goes through the throes of a learning curve. We're hoping that we can make some of these evident ahead of time, that you might be able to see them coming ahead of time, and that you're prepared for them when they do come. Some of the issues that we might see from living off campus are how to manage to get to campus consistently, stressing out about rent and other living expenses, how on campus amenities might not seem as available to you, doing work in your own home, and also how to utilize today's online world. First, when we're trying to get to campus consistently, it's important that you don't have too much hubris when it comes to getting to your classes on time. This goes a lot with time management in general, something that we've talked about in previous lectures. But it is important that you understand how you're going to get to campus and also how you're going to get there consistently. For those living on campus or near enough to campus to walk to their classes, this probably won't be for you, but it could help in the future. If you do need to drive to campus, you often have a few choices, and you also have a few temptations as well. First is the idea of parking. Theoretically, the smartest choice is to get a parking pass. Of course, the cost of such things isn't usually involved in your budget, which makes it less appealing. I'm here to tell you that it's the smart choice. Save yourself on parking tickets, save yourself on time, and save yourself on headaches trying to be fancy. Stop trying to assume that you can figure out the parking on the street that has maybe two spots a day if you're lucky, or thinking that you can anticipate the parking enforcement's route so that you can get around their ticketing. Get that parking pass. It's the one thing that you can take off your plate when you've got enough to worry about. Most colleges also offer a comprehensive busing system, especially when they're in the middle of a city. As someone who came from an area where most people didn't use buses, at least consistently, it can be a little intimidating. They shouldn't be. Once you're on them, you're surrounded by other college students, and you'll feel less uncertain than that when you started. Of course, this, as well as other parking, requires good time management. When scheduling to arrive, don't try to arrive on time. When you cram every minute of your life precisely, you will lose that game. This goes with scheduling your work hours as well. We went over this in another series about how to balance work with school and not pressing your time together between the two and how helpful that might be. Rather than ending your shift 20 minutes before your class because it only takes 10 minutes of transit time, you should give yourself 10 minutes of lay time at least. 5 minutes to walk to the bus, 5 minutes from the bus stop to the actual class. If you leave a shift 2 minutes late, you already didn't give yourself enough time. The same also goes when you're getting up in the morning. There's a saying that goes, if you're early, you're on time, and if you're on time, you're late. And that truly makes you feel that way as well. The 10 minutes at home aren't felt, but the 10 minutes late are. This also helps you get away from the feared feeling of skipping school. College allows you to do this more freely than before, and it is a challenge. It's not that every class or lecture is important, it's that it keeps you on schedule as the class progresses. Don't work harder than you have to, and show up for those classes. Next, one of the things that people often stress over when they live off campus is bills that they have to pay throughout the month. A lot of times, this alone can feel like it takes all your brain power to keep it all in order. That and the means of keeping your roof over your head makes this a little bit of a tricky situation, but where it comes to time management, this also can come in handy. When you plan ahead, everything eventually comes down to execution and routine. Make sure your bills can be paid with your schedule. Make sure that your feet are under you before your quarter starts, and make sure that your living situation is sustainable. There isn't a whole lot that can be done or should change throughout the quarter, but just make sure that you're planning ahead and you aren't surprised by something to go awry unexpectedly.
Pull the lever, Kronk. Wrong
Huh?
Something that also seems to affect a lot of people is that they don't use the resources given to them to the fullest extent because their connection to campus isn't seen as 24 hours. We've gone over some library resources in other lectures, which can be used wherever. But it's also important to know the hours that things are available on campus and how they work for you. Library hours, faculty members, counselors, and academic advisors all have limited time space, and you need to be aware of them. You should get just as much for your money as someone who lives on campus. A lot of times, this looks like being on campus more than your classroom time. Rather than trying to be off campus as much as possible, you should realize that as your priority lies in school, so should your time. But this is a persistent issue with those living off campus. Schools in general have also attempted to give resources and reach out to those who might feel disconnected. If you feel like you aren't getting the most out of school, reach out to an advisor who can point you in the right direction. Rather than trying to flex up and not need the extra help, you should use that extra help to bolster you even farther than you thought you could go. That being said, there is a lot more available to people who are remotely connected to the school than there were 10, 15, or even 20 years ago, which was the year 2000, by the way. If you reach out to those advisors and they point you to online resources, realize that this is merely the gate into a vast, gigantic source to complement your education. It's hard to find a social place that adheres to those who work without having Wi Fi. Being always connected to the internet means that you are always connected to the university. Too often, the faculty are not bugged enough through online means. More and more professors are becoming more comfortable with students reach out to them in a non-professional or at least non-typical setting as well. This is huge, and they wouldn't offer it if they didn't mean it. Reach out to them and email them or text them if they give you that opportunity. If you have a question about the assignment you are working on, chances are that the professor will get back to you before you could find the answer on your own. Even as this video is being recorded, we are all learning to cope with being remote. Dealing with a health crisis that locks down the world not only puts you in a spot you've never been before, but it also puts those in charge in spots they've never been before. The thing to constantly remind yourself is that you aren't a burden to anyone you reach out to, or should reach out to. They give you these resources because they would rather see you succeed, and don't think of you as someone who shouldn't be here. Allow yourself to find these resources and act on them to give yourself the best shot available to succeed the position you put yourself in. What this brings us to, though, as well, is don't only try to work from home, or at least not from where you're comfortable. As most of us are realizing as we're being asked to work from home for the first time, we tend to be less productive in our own home. There's plenty of research out there that goes over the whys of being comfortable and the productivity that lacks because of it, or the stress for that matter. But the same goes for those who are more remote at normal times when they're going through education. If you're in a situation where you need to stay at your house, choose an area in the living space that's a work zone. When you go to this place, you're in work mode, like going to the library, and you should try to actively not be distracted by the too many options around you. Also, though, when you're done with work, leave that space. It allows the barrier to exist for work mode. I found that it's best to go somewhere than stay at home if I'm trying to get work done. A local cafe will almost certainly have Wi Fi, and quite honestly, you don't need to break the bank to make this a regular habit. In fact, especially around these college towns, these cafes have a general understanding of people's situations and their motives, and they often respect that as you do them. If you're in public, too, this makes you focus on what you came to do. It's awkward to watch Netflix in public or online shop when you're supposed to be doing something else. That type of public scrutiny, whether it's fabricated or not, will be a good accountability buddy for you. use them without knowing, and your workload will thank you for them later. Well, that's my time for now. Good luck out there, and we'll see you soon.